welcome you to this knowledge building and learning synthesis. It's the first that we are having, but at the end of each day, for the rest of the symposium, we are going to be having a knowledge building and learning synthesis session towards the end of the day. The purpose of this is to help us summarize the sessions that we'll have had in the day, but also have a reflective moment on the issues that are raising. We expect that many of these issues will eventually inform the final step of the symposium. So join me in welcoming Ana Lorena. Is she here? Ana Lorena. We are in deep trouble. Real deep trouble.
She's coming.
I'll welcome Sai from Malaysia to come and join the panel. Let's clap for the panelists. I'll welcome Clara Benlinda from Guatemala. Anna and Belinda are nowhere to be seen. I'll welcome Bojan from Macedonia. Someone should tell Anna that she is delaying the flight. Someone should tell Belinda that she's also delaying the flight. So, basically, Anna is supposed to give us a short... I see Anna arriving. She has kept the time. Just take a seat. Is Belinda here?
Belinda's coming. She's also Latin American.
So they have kept the Latin American time. So Anna is going to give us a very short overview of the learnings that we can garner from all the sessions and the panels that have been happening today. After her summary of that, we will then be joined by the three panelists. Sai from Malaysia, we've shared a number of sessions. Belinda from Guatemala, and Bojan from Macedonia will all be giving reflections on how they think the day has gone and what the emerging issues have been for them.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ana Lorena Ruano, and I'm the research coordinator at the Center for the Study of Equity and Governance in Health Systems, CEGS, in Guatemala, and I'm also an associate professor at the University of Bergen in Norway. I was tasked today with summing up the day, and I will try to do my best. We can all agree that it was very intense, and that it is impossible to sum up in a few minutes all the things that were discussed. But this first day has shown us that we have a common struggle. All around the world, we face maternal mortality rates that are too high, health system financing that is too low. We see risky health behaviors in our communities, and how little information and how few tools are available for them to empower themselves through knowledge and practice. Throughout the day, we heard about a lack of reliable health-related data, how not all knowledge is equally valid, and most starkly, how citizenship is used not as a shield to protect people from abuses and safeguard their health, but as a weapon to exclude them from territory and from services. Meanwhile, we struggle between the utopic goal of achieving health for all, of attaining the right to health for everyone, and the reality of ever-weakening states and health systems. We run into the contradiction of reaching universal health coverage through the use of private providers who have their own interests and agendas. This morning showed us the real value of our community of practice. Through COPASA, we can see and work both vertically and horizontally. Vertically, by identifying and understanding the complexity of global policies and the positive and negative implications they have for the right to health of different populations, as the goal of zero open defecation showed us earlier this morning. Horizontally, by allowing us to share common practice and learn from strategic approaches that can be translated and adapted into our own context, as was the case for the ICT session today and the examples of Guatemala and India. Social accountability is a critical component of health service delivery. Today, we were able to see the importance of being strategic and working in partnerships with communities. Doing this helps to ensure that we are using the most appropriate tools and approaches. However, this is not new for us. We already know all of this, and still it is important to state it loud and clear, because this is the only true way to ensure that the participation of so many people around the world translates into a loud and clear voice that influences policy and improves health systems. I was tasked with summarizing the key learnings for the day. Like I said before, this is not an easy task, but I'll do my best to see what we have learned. We have learned that words have power. Many of our sessions today discussed and problematized the use of the word citizen. The problematic use of it to exclude entire groups of people from the services they are entitled to is something we need to discuss more and act upon in our context and as a whole. The privatization of health services as the new paradigm for health system financing brings with it issues of how to keep the private sector accountable and how to make these transactions transparent. Who will regulate this? How can we prevent conflict of interest? What can we do in the face of these conflicts of interest? For the first time, our first theme on community action and accountability, social accountability came out as a key strategy for health system strengthening, and also as a way to improve communications between actors, including at the community level. Theme 2 on indigenous people makes us take up the discussion of what citizenry is and how they fit into the larger global context, given how indigenous people from all around the world have been excluded from decision-making processes at every level. Theme 3 on sexual and reproductive health looked at how hierarchies in communities affect the quality of reproductive health services and reminded us of the need to see communities as heterogeneous and complex. Power continues to be the central concept for understanding and improving access to these services for women all around the world. Theme 4 explored the role and function of the private sector and how we can reset the narrative and recapture meaning and space so that we, ourselves, can control and make decisions over our bodies and the care that we receive. Finally, Theme 5, which focuses on healthcare workers, reminded us of how overburdened they are. Around the world, human resources for health spend entirely too much time reporting and being accountable to higher-ups who do not provide the support they need, who do not give the supplies that are necessary to give good quality care to communities everywhere. And I have a few questions for the audience and something that we can reflect as a whole. How can we, as COPASA, work with idioms and language to have evidence that resonates with communities and with decision makers? What is the role of strategy in our everyday work? And how do we engage with our peers and with our colleagues to learn and implement complex processes that empower the people and that diffuse decision-making power among more stakeholders? And finally, what is citizenship? How can we build an inclusive world for all And how can we use human rights approaches when so many of us are excluded from belonging to a state? This is a problem that, as climate change worsens and creates more conflict, will only worsen.
So good evening, everyone. I would like to actually put the synthesis for today across 4 trajectories. Throughout the day, I've been listening, and A was something around principles of social accountability that came across. B, the discussions around citizenship. I would rather call it people-centered. Maybe that is the terminology that we want to use. And then the third thing is more about the discussions that reflected or that cut across the disempowered state or the empowered state. I mean, let's thrash that out as well. And the fourth point being around health system strengthening and the right to health. So I will just synthesize my learnings and based on these 4 trajectories. So the first one being principles around social accountability, and I came across different words that were used by the practitioners around solidarity, around movement building, around human rights, justice, dignity, breathing in the lived realities of people, voices, equality, non-discrimination, inclusion, leaving no one behind, and highest attainable standard of health, participation, democracy, and social accountability to deepen democracy, negotiating power, and also about empowerment and political processes. So these, I thought, were the words that just came out of many of these sessions, and those constitute the principles aspects of social accountability. Moving to the aspect of citizenship, and again, as I've said, I would rather call it people because it's a more inclusive articulation of how we all see ourselves as people. And the sessions that I actually attended, it focused on seeing people as active change agents claiming their own rights. They are active in social accountability and people participating in their own health needs. And there were sessions where we came across examples that talked about role of communities in identifying their problems and empowering themselves and forming community advocacy groups. And for me, that was also, being in this world of advocacy, research, and all the work, but communities themselves as advocacy groups was something that was very empowering, because most of the time we see a change agent, working for advocacy, lobbying, and advocating. But, the whole terminology of community advocacy groups, I think that was like, it really was something that it moved me as well. And also inclusive planning and bringing all stakeholders together. So it's not about, okay, you're going and the duty bearers and the right holders, but, working together in a more inclusive manner. Chetna also brought out the issue of women assemblies and how we can see power of women to advocate for their rights and challenge power relationships. So in limiting context. So again, they were all very empowering stories that we can all learn from and take it forward. The third aspect, I think it also was brought about in the plenary, and that was about the empowered or a disempowered state. And I think we are best put in a place if the state is empowered. Because if the state is not empowered, then we have a private stakeholder or a stakeholder who is not obligated to provide rights to us. So we should be working towards an empowered state and changing the narratives that actually look at private sector as functional and state as dysfunctional. So looking at those aspects was another area that I thought it needs discussion. And then the systems and the right to health aspect. So within the systems, Again, going back to the Alma Ata Declaration and how it is so important even today. And just taking the example of India, now we have this double burden of communicable and non-communicable diseases. And I was actually looking at some of the data on maternal mortality. And despite the progress that we have all talking about, and I've said this morning also, it was like at least 35,000 women in India die annually. So what is this kind of progress that we are talking about? We have not really made progress. The progress is in pockets. So, and on top of that, we have issues of reproductive cancers. We have issues of cervical cancers and breast cancers that are also adding up to the list of mortality and morbidity around reproduction for women. So we are dealing with more issues, and unless we have a strengthened health system that actually focuses on the right to health, we will not be in a better place, because it goes back to, again, health financing, out-of-pocket spending, where, again, women and young people will, again, be the worst lot to seek services. So, yeah, these are some of the trajectories that I thought I could present.
Muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Soy Clara Benilda Batzin,
My name is Clara Benilda Batzin.
Maya Tzutujil de Guatemala.
I'm an indigenous woman from the Sotujil ethnicity from Guatemala.
Bueno, voy a tratar de hacer una síntesis de los temas del día de hoy sobre gobernanza, ciudadanía y rendición de cuentas.
I'm going to try to do a synthesis about the discussions that we had today around governance, citizenship, and accountability.
Lo que realmente para poder ejercer una ciudadanía activa y participativa,
An active and participative citizenry
se deben de fortalecer procesos formativos de conocimientos,
can only occur if we set in place processes of deep learning. Yeah.
porque según nuestra experiencia como promotores y defensores de derechos humanos,
Because according to our experience as promoters and defenders of human rights,
comunidades retiradas del área rural, indígenas, mayablantes que no entienden idiomas oficiales,
communities that live far away, that are indigenous, that only speak indigenous languages and do not know the official language,
desconocen cuáles son sus derechos y sus obligaciones.
they just do not know what their rights are, what their obligations are.
Entonces, para poder ejercer una participación ciudadana activa, debemos de trabajar primero en el fortalecimiento de esos conocimientos, de los liderazgos, para que podamos ejercerlo.
In order to have true, meaningful participation, we need to work on developing this kind of knowledge so that communities can be empowered.
Entonces, cuando conocemos nuestros derechos, cuando conocemos nuestras obligaciones como ciudadanos, podemos ejercer, podemos participar en espacios de tomas de decisiones.
When we know our rights, when we know our obligations as citizens, it is only then that we can really act as the citizenry.
Y como ciudadanas y ciudadanos podemos intervenir en espacios de toma de decisiones
Because as citizens, we have the right to intervene and to participate in decision-making spaces,
para que no seamos más excluidos, ni discriminados, ni marginados dentro de las políticas públicas.
so that we do not keep being excluded, marginalized, and isolated from public policy and policy making.
Y también podamos ejercer la auditoría social en los servicios públicos
So that we can also carry out accountability of public services
y demandar, exigir a los estados para que cumplan con sus obligaciones y responsabilidades lo que les marca la ley.
and demand from our states to live out their responsibilities and obligations as stated by law.
Y que los diferentes niveles, local, comunitario, municipal, regional, nacional, realmente tengan que trabajar como un enlace para poder tener mejores resultados.
And so that all levels, community, local, municipal, regional, national, can work hand in hand so that policies are really interlinked.
Y no permitir que nuestros gobiernos callen nuestra voz y no nos escuchen y no tomen en cuenta nuestras decisiones.
so that the government can't stop our voices, can't hush us and tell us that we can't make decisions.
Porque muchos de nosotros, como defensores de derechos humanos, estamos siendo criminalizados, estigmatizados y excluidos de cualquier programa que logre bienestar para nuestro país.
Because so many of us human rights defenders are being excluded, isolated from participating, are being criminalized and persecuted for doing what we're supposed to do.
Y todo esto lo hacemos en memoria de defensores y defensoras de derechos humanos que han sido asesinados por defender nuestros derechos.
And we carry on because we are working for the memory and in the memory of those that have been killed for doing this, for defending our human rights.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Being the last panelist in the session that summarizes up, probably I will repeat most of the things already said. But also I'm a member of the COPASA steering committee. So in this synthesis plenary, I will also try to talk through the lens of the COPASA and what can we learn all together as a member of this network and as individuals as well. Coming from Macedonia, from the region of Southeastern Europe, is some kind of region in the limbo. We do not belong to the global South, but we are also far from the developed Western European countries. So this is a really unique position that we are put in. We are not considered global South, we are not considered underdeveloped, but we are far, far from developed countries. So many things discussed here for Asia, South Asia, or Africa, so on. I can also share it from Macedonia and our region as well. Especially I was really, and I think we should all carry on with us the issue about the citizenship and going backwards, the backlash of the definition. If it was a positive example once upon a time, now it's been used for diminish the rights of the people. This is really something that I hear much more here and really got an impact of me, and I will follow upon of it further on. Really, it was an interesting discussion that we should all, in our accountability work and civil society work in general, we should also think about the ability of our states to fulfill the human rights, because we have international treaties, most of our countries have ratified them, but whether the states are able or not being able or from other interests, that's why the private entrepreneurs and for-profit organizations are entering and taking over the crucial sectors of the state, including the healthcare sector. Actually, a lot was talked about the public-private partnership in the health sector, about the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency, which especially represents a danger for fulfillment of the right to health of marginalized people, and even much more danger in the countries where there is lack of proper regulation of the countries entirely and the private sector especially. Because as it was discussed, how will our governments hold accountable the private entrepreneurs, for-profit organization, if the government representatives and the government institution do not feel that they should be accountable in front of their own people? Although they live from our money, they live from our taxes, they still do not feel accountable in front of the citizens, but they are only accountable in front of their superiors, like the ministers, the prime ministers, and so on, or other elites. Definitely, also it was an interesting discussion about that usually in accountability we are looking for the final achievements, whether the right to health was fulfilled, whether these services is fulfilled, without looking the process of it, whether by achieving a right of a certain person there is endangerment of the rights of the persons that are somehow tackled by the fulfillment of certain rights. In this, it was this discussion about another issue, not health, but also it's very valuable for the health services, because in many hospitals in all of our countries there are medical staff that are working in very poor condition for very poor salaries, and how will they perform? How will they fulfill the right to health for everybody and especially for the marginalized group. This brings corruption and other misconduct and discrimination and other issues. Also, a thing that stands in my mind through several discussions is that very often in our countries the policies are not in correlation with the reality. It was used in the example of manual scavengers in India that are not recognized by law. It's a legal profession, but they exist. Also, similar in my country, the law says that there are no people without health insurance. Actually, there are. So this that the law does not reflect the reality makes obstacles for the people, especially for the marginalized group of people, to fulfill their rights to the full potential, because some of this they are not recognized. Their status is not recognized by the law. It was also what struck me was the discussion that the state have been disempowered by the global international bodies, influential corporations, and other stakeholders, and that the civic space is closing globally. We know, but it was very interesting sentence from the panelists from the morning session that, but the door is still a little bit open, and we must keep kicking the door in order to expand our work and to promote the fulfillment of the human rights and right to health among the vulnerable groups. Definitely, how we are using our social accountability approach in health in order to fulfill the right to health. And it was an interesting discussion on one of the workshops that a strategic approach is needed in implementation of the social accountability approach, and building of coalition on multiple levels, starting from the community level to the to the regional, sub-regional, national, international, and global level. So the social accountability must be tracked throughout the entire vertical scale, up from the bottom to the top decision-making structures in the country and on international level. It was also discussed by several presenters today that combining the social accountability with legal empowerment approaches enhances the work and it represents benefit from the communities, but also for the communication with, it enhances communication with the relevant stakeholders. And at the end, we are mostly focused on the governments or other entities or other stakeholders, and it's important, and we should be. But also in the discussion today, some of the presenters stated that we must also work about the, let's say, not about accountability within the communities, because I will use the phrase of one of the presenters, very often the oppressed are becoming oppressors. And that's why we should also focus our accountability work within the communities to not just empower them regarding their rights and entitlements, but also to work with them to build their social cohesion, which will also enable a joint action, improving their lives, but also building joint action for advocacy and fulfillment of their rights. Thank you.
Very powerful messages. Everyone is wondering where the state is. Where is the state? I think it seems to be a very big question. Everyone is talking about citizenship. And I think these are becoming extremely pertinent questions to think about. Now, we want to break the record. In all sessions, speakers have used more time than the audience. And yet we are saying power to the people. Can you say power to the people? But the people don't seem to have power. Power to the people. The floor is yours. Can we move the mics? I need volunteers to help me. What have been the learnings for you throughout the day? What are those areas that you think we've built knowledge throughout the day? Don't make lengthy submissions, but go to the point. I want to warn you that I have the cutoff for the microphone here. So if the submissions are lengthy, we'll cut you off. So let's see some hands.
Thank you so much for your presentations and summaries. I want to share a few things that I learned. My name is Eunice Owino from Kenya. Some of the trajectories and some of the terms that I came across today. One was the interruptive narrative, that we really need to cause that interruption. Secondly, from a friend, a colleague I was sitting with, and he was like, you must have a shadow report. Once the government gives us their report, can we digest? Can we dissect? Can we look at the gaps? And then as a civil society, we come out with our shadow report to push for the rights of the people. Thank you.
Do we see some hands? We left all this time for your hands, guys. There is a hand, some hands right at the back. Yes, those that need translations, don't feel shy. Please translate. I wish I could say that in Spanish or Hindu.
Ante todo, buenas tardes. No sé si por favor la compañera Lorena me pueda traducir.
Con gusto.
Gracias. Bueno, ante todo, buenas tardes nuevamente. El aprendizaje que estos días estamos teniendo es muy importante para mí. Desde el punto de vista de ejercicio de ciudadanía, creo que es aparte de un derecho.
I need to. Good afternoon to everyone. She welcomes everyone and says she's very happy to be here and be part of everything and all the knowledge that can be absorbed today.
Bueno, aparte, el ejercicio de ciudadanía desde un concepto teórico tiene que ir más con lo práctico, ¿no? Eso siempre interiorizando nosotros como persona desde el enfoque de derechos humanos. Para empezar, creo que ya es un derecho, el derecho a la salud, pero mucha teoría, no creo que tiene que ser más